It was a vibrant night at the pizzeria where I used to go with my mother, Martha. It was a small place, but always full of life. The smell of melted cheese and tomato sauce wafted through the air, while laughter and conversation intertwined like a symphony of joy. That day, we were there to celebrate her birthday, a little break from our busy routine. Looking at her, with her tired but genuine smile, I felt that, despite all the challenges we faced, that moment was still special. "Lucas, you know the last slice is yours, right?" she said, looking at the pizza that was almost finished. I didn't want her to worry about it, so I smiled and nodded. "Yes, Mom, but you deserve it," I replied, lightly pushing the plate towards him. She laughed and took the last slice, but at the same time her gaze strayed to the window. I followed his line of sight and noticed a worn-looking man standing outside. He was looking inside the pizzeria, as if wondering when he could enter. There was something in the way he watched, a mixture of hope and resignation, that touched me deeply. His disheveled hair and shabby clothes spoke of a difficult life. I wondered what had brought him there, if he had a home, if he had anything to eat. His image made me uneasy, and I couldn't help the urge to do something. "Mom, I'm going to get some water," I said, getting up from the table. In fact, I wanted to get closer to the man. What I was about to do was unthinkable, but the compassion I felt for him spoke louder than any hesitation. As I walked toward the door, my mind was buzzing with questions. What would have happened in your life? Did he have a family? The difficulties he faced were so real that they seemed to show in his eyes. The approach was quick, and when I got close, he noticed my presence and turned to me. "Hi, sir," I said, a little nervous. I couldn't help but notice you were looking at the pizza." He smiled shyly, as if he was surprised that I had spoken to him. "Yeah, I was just admiring it. Not like something I could have, but..." He hesitated, looking down. Just a moment of nostalgia. Those words touched me. What was a simple gesture of kindness began to turn into something bigger. I didn't know why, but in that moment, I decided that I couldn't leave him there, just dreaming about what he couldn't have. "I have a slice of pizza left, if you want." The words came out before I could think twice. The man looked stunned, his expression quickly changing from surprise to disbelief. Are you sure?" he asked, almost in disbelief. "Absolute certainty," I replied, smiling. "You seem to be hungry and I can't eat anymore." He looked at me for a moment, as if assessing the sincerity of my gesture, and then, slowly, a smile formed on his face. "Thank you very much, young man," he said, accepting my offer. "This means more than you can imagine." As he accepted the last slice, something inside me lit up. The feeling of having done something good, even if small, brought warmth to my heart. I knew that that simple act might not change the world, but, somehow, it changed mine. "My name is Lucas," he said, extending his hand. The man squeezed mine firmly with a gleam of gratitude in his eyes. "I'm Mr. Thompson. And to you, Lucas, I thank you from the bottom of my heart." With that, I returned to the table, a mix of emotions bubbling inside me. The pizzeria was still full, but I was lost in thoughts about that man and what he had just done. What I didn't know was that this simple gesture would lead me to discover secrets that would change my family's life forever. When I returned to the table, my heart was still beating with the adrenaline of the act I had just performed. I looked at my mother, who was enjoying her slice of pizza, a smile on her face, and thought about how insignificant that gesture might seem. But to me, it meant so much more. "Mom," I began, hesitating a little. I gave the last slice of pizza to a man outside. She lifted her head, eyes wide with surprise. "You what?" The disbelief in his voice was palpable. I saw him looking out the window. He looked so hungry. I couldn't resist, I confessed, feeling a little embarrassed. But at the same time, a wave of pride formed in my chest. Martha took a deep breath, her gaze softening. "Lucas, you did a beautiful thing. Kindness is never in vain." I was relieved to see his initial concern dissipate. I just thought he needed it more than I did. She smiled, her eyes shining with excitement. "This is how you build a better world, my son. Help others, even if it is with a small gesture. You taught me something today." Those words resonated with me. More than just the pizza, I had offered a stranger a little hope. What else could you do? The thought unsettled me and, at the same time, filled me with new determination. As we talked, I could see the man, who now called himself Mr. Thompson, walking away from the window with the slice of pizza in his hand. He looked back and, as if sensing my gaze, nodded slightly. Such a simple gesture, but it conveyed a depth of gratitude that words could not explain. Who was that man, do you think? What did he go through? I asked, more to myself than to my mother. I don't know, honey. Sometimes people face battles we can't imagine. The important thing is that you made a difference in that moment, she replied, with a tone of voice that conveyed her wisdom. After a few minutes, I was almost lost in thought when suddenly I heard a familiar tone. It was Mr. Thompson's voice. He had approached our table. "Hi, young man," he began, a smile that lit up his tired face. "I'm Mr. Thompson. I wanted to thank you again for the slice of pizza. You don't know how much that meant to me." "I just did what I thought was right," I replied, a little awkwardly, but I couldn't hide a shy smile. "Sometimes what seems like a small gesture can have a big impact on someone's life," he said, looking into my eyes with an intensity that made me feel special. "I am going through a difficult time, but your kindness has given me hope." "Thanks." I looked at him, a man who seemed to have faced many hardships, and I realized there was something more to his story. "If it's not too invasive, what happened to you? I mean, why were you there looking in?" Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment, as if pondering his words. "Life is full of twists and turns, young man. I lost everything I had in the blink of an eye. But life goes on, and I still believe in human kindness." Those words touched me deeply. How could someone who had lost so much still have faith? What else did he have to share? I wanted to know more, but I realized he wasn't ready to go into detail. "If you need anything, feel free to reach out to me," I said, trying to open a door to possible friendship. In that moment, it wasn't just a gesture of compassion, but a path to something greater that could develop between us. "I'll keep that in mind," he replied with a slight nod before walking away. What else could happen between us? Curiosity boiled within me, and at the same time, a feeling that there was much more to Mr. Thompson's life than I imagined. After he walked away, I looked back at my mother. "Do you think I'll see him again?" I asked, almost involuntarily. "I hope so, Lucas. You did something good today." "And sometimes, the universe brings people back when we need it most," she said, as she grabbed a napkin and began cleaning the table. I kept thinking about those words, while the movement of the pizzeria continued around us. The idea that kindness could create unexpected connections made me dreamy. What else could come from that simple gesture? What else could I do? In the days that followed that night at the pizzeria, I couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Thompson. His figure, a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, tormented my thoughts. I wondered how someone could get to that point and what else was hiding behind that tired expression. The feeling of compassion that I had felt when giving the last slice of pizza did not disappear. On the contrary, it intensified. One day, while walking through the city, an idea popped into my head. I needed to go back to the pizzeria. When I entered the establishment, the atmosphere was the same as always, full of laughter and lively conversations. The smell of cheese and tomato sauce still permeated the air, and soon I began to feel a little lighter. However, the heart was still heavy with Mr. Thompson's absence. I looked around, expecting to see him at a table, but hope quickly turned to disappointment. He wasn't there. What did I expect to find? A hungry man who, perhaps, had found a new path? Or a story you could share again? As I moved around the pizzeria, I noticed something different on one of the tables. A piece of paper was there, almost as if it was waiting for me. I approached hesitantly. When I picked up the note, my heart skipped a beat. It was a simple drawing of a tree, but there was something more. Below the drawing were written the words, "Kindness grows where it is planted." I stood there, still absorbing the message. A wave of heat ran through my body. It was as if those simple words, written by a stranger, spoke directly to me. I remembered Mr. Thompson's smile as he accepted the slice of pizza. The gesture, although small, had meaning. I thought about how kindness, even in its simplest form, could make a difference in someone's life. The feeling of helplessness I felt at the sight of the starving man turned into a burning determination. If I could help one person, why not others? With the note in hand, I returned home, my mind buzzing with ideas. When I walked in, I saw my mother, Martha, in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The tiredness on her face was evident, but she always greeted me with a warm smile. "Hi, son. How was your day?" he asked, while stirring a pan. "It was good, Mom. I went back to the pizzeria and, well, I found something that made me think," I replied, sitting down at the table. "Something good, I hope," she said, with a curious look. "Yes, a message about kindness. Do you remember the man I gave the last slice of pizza to? He wasn't there, but he left a note that said kindness grows where it's planted." Martha stopped what she was doing and looked at me carefully. "That's really beautiful, Lucas. Sometimes a small gesture can change someone's day, or even their life," he reflected. "I know, Ma. That's why I thought we could do something together. Help people, distribute food, or even organize something in the community. What do you think?" I proposed, feeling the adrenaline of the idea. She smiled, her eyes shining with possibility. "That sounds wonderful, son. We can start planning something. The community needs more people willing to help." At that moment, I realized that Mr. Thompson's note wasn't just a message. It was a call to action. That night, as we planned our little charitable acts, the idea that our lives could touch others began to take root in me. I was determined to sow kindness, just like that tree in the drawing, hoping that one day it would grow and blossom into something great. From then on, each small gesture of kindness became a new seed, and I couldn't wait to see them sprout. While helping at the shelter, a strange feeling came over me. The smell of hot soup and fresh bread mixed with the grateful smiles of the people receiving the food. It was gratifying, but my mind still wandered to Mr. Thompson. The gesture of kindness I showed him seemed small compared to the stories I heard there, but at the same time, he had become a symbol of hope for me. It was then that I heard a familiar voice. "Luke, is that you, boy?" I looked to the side and recognized the man speaking. It was Mr. Almeida, an old friend of my father, who used to come to our house on holidays. He had a welcoming manner and a smile that lit up the room. "Hi, Almeida. Good to see you," I replied, feeling a pang in my heart as I remembered my father. "What are you doing here?" "I come to help whenever I can. This shelter does a good job. But what about you? What brings you here?" "I'm helping. It's good to do something for those in need." I felt a hint of pride in my words, but my mind was still on Mr. Thompson. "You know the world is full of surprises, right? One day you can be on one side of the coin and the next everything can change." He looked down thoughtfully. "You know, I knew a man who went through this. His name is Mr. Thompson. He was a successful businessman, but he lost everything in a financial scam." The heart raced. "Mr. Thompson? What happened to him?" "Ah, boy, his life was a tragedy. He had a thriving company, but things changed quickly. He trusted the wrong people, and suddenly he was back to square one. I learned that he is out there in difficult situations." He was at the pizzeria, looking out the window when I gave him my last slice of pizza, I said anxiously. But he didn't want to talk too much about himself. He is a reserved man. But his story is deeper than you might think. The blow he suffered also affected his family. "I knew your father, Lucas. They were friends. Your father's company went bankrupt because of the same scam." Those words were like a punch in the stomach. The connection between us, Mr. Thompson and I, was becoming clearer and clearer. "So he and my dad, they went through the same hell?" I asked, trying to process the information. "Exactly. Your father was a man of integrity. He was always a tireless worker, and the coup was a huge blow to us all. Mr. Thompson isolated himself after all this. The pain was too strong. But I didn't know that." My mind was spinning, trying to put the pieces together. How could a simple act of kindness connect our stories of pain and loss? What can I do? Continue to be that light that you are, Lucas. Sometimes what people need most is someone who cares. If you can talk to him, it might help him see that there is still hope. I nodded, absorbing his words. The idea that kindness could bring healing and connection drove me. From that moment on, my determination grew stronger. I needed to meet Mr. Thompson again, not only to understand his story, but to offer something more substantial, a connection between us that could make a difference. After the conversation with Mr. Almeida, I returned home, but I couldn't get Mr. Thompson out of my head. He was more than a starving man I helped. He was a part of my father's story, a fragment I didn't know. What else could he tell me? What else could be revealed? Night came, and I sat at the table, thinking about everything I had learned. My mother was busy in the kitchen, preparing something simple for dinner. I looked at her, admiring her strength and resilience. "Mom, do you remember Mr. Thompson?" I asked, trying to find out if she knew him too. "Of course, my love. The businessman who fell from grace." I felt sorry for him when I heard the story. "Did you meet him?" "Yes, a little. I want to meet him again. I feel like there is more to be discovered." She looked at me with an encouraging smile. "If you feel that way, then you should go for it. Never underestimate the power of empathy and understanding, Lucas." "I think I'll do it." My heart beat with new determination. The connection between my father and Mr. Thompson could be the key to something bigger, something I couldn't yet understand. I was about to embark on a journey that would change not only his life, but mine and my mother's. The morning was sunny, and the park exuded a refreshing air. Birdsong mingled with the laughter of children playing nearby, but my mind was filled with a single thought: finding Mr. Thompson. Since our first interaction at the pizzeria, your story has been on my mind. The idea of helping someone who had faced so many difficulties seemed like an important mission, and I was determined to find out more about him. As I walked, I spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench, surrounded by pigeons that roost around him. It was Mr. Thompson. He seemed calmer there, feeding the birds small crumbs of bread. My heart raced with anticipation as I approached. "Mr. Thompson," I called, a little hesitant. He turned slowly, his eyes lighting up as he recognized me. "Lucas, what a pleasant surprise." He smiled, looking genuinely happy to see me. "I thought I could find you here." "How are you?" I asked, trying to hide the anxiety in my voice. "I am well, thanks. This place brings me peace." He looked at the pigeons, who were pecking the ground in search of food. "And you? How is your mother?" "She's busy as always. But it's fine," I replied, remembering how Martha worked tirelessly to support us. I'd like to know more about you, if you don't mind." Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting into the distance. Finally, he sighed and nodded. "Of course, Lucas. Sometimes it's good to share." He gestured for me to sit next to him. Life can be full of surprises, some good and others not so much. "What happened to you?" I asked, curious. He began to tell his story. It was a story of ups and downs, a narrative that revealed how a man who had everything could lose everything in the blink of an eye. With a disastrous financial blow, his company went bankrupt, and as a result he lost not only his business, but also friends and confidence in himself. "I used to have a restaurant, did you know?" he said, looking at the sky. "It was my dream, but everything fell apart." "A restaurant?" My mind started working. I never knew. It was a place where people gathered, shared stories and meals. He smiled, lost in his memories. "But now, what remains are memories and pigeons in the park. Have you thought about reopening it?" The question came out before I could stop myself. He looked at me with surprise, as if I had turned on a light in his mind. "No, I never thought it was possible." His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and hope. "I don't have the resources or the necessary confidence. What if I can help?" Determination grew inside me. "I know it may sound crazy, but I would love to help you rebuild that dream." The words hung in the air for a moment. Mr. Thompson looked surprised, but in his eyes I saw a spark of hope. "Would you really do that?" he asked, a shy smile beginning to form on his lips. "Of course. We can work together, plan everything. I have some ideas." I started speaking quickly, excited about the possibility. He shook his head, still skeptical, but something in his gaze changed. "You're a special boy, Lucas. The kindness you showed by offering me that slice of pizza wasn't just a gesture. It was a sign that there are still people willing to help. I only did what I thought was right," he said, a little embarrassed. "Sometimes what's right is the hardest thing to do." He looked at the pigeons again and added, "You're right. Maybe it's time for me to dream again. The rest of the conversation flowed naturally, as if we were old friends. We discussed ideas for the restaurant, how welcoming the atmosphere would be, and the menu, full of homemade recipes. With every word, I saw Mr. Thompson's passion resurface, and it filled me with hope. When we said goodbye, he thanked me sincerely. "Lucas, you gave me more than an idea. You gave me the chance to believe again." He smiled, and I felt like, somehow, we were starting a new chapter in our lives. While we were working on the restaurant project, a sunny afternoon illuminated the small room that Mr. Thompson had transformed into his office. The smell of new wood mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. I was sitting at the table, looking at the worn notebook he had brought, full of notes and recipes. With each page I turned, I felt a deeper connection with my father, as if he was there, beside me, guiding me. "Lucas, look at this," Thompson said, pointing to a tomato sauce recipe my dad used to make. He always said that the secret was using fresh tomatoes and a touch of affection. I smiled, remembering the afternoons I watched my father cook, the way he spoke to the ingredients as if they were friends. My father loved to cook. He said that food is a form of love. Thompson looked at me, his eyes full of emotion. "You know, I always admired your father. He was a man of principles. When everything fell apart, I lost not just a friend, but a part of myself." Those words touched my heart. The man before me wasn't just a hungry stranger I had helped. He was someone who had a history intertwined with my family's. "So why didn't you tell me this sooner?" I asked, curiosity consuming me. "I didn't want you to feel like you were helping someone because of a past you couldn't change. I wanted you to know that your kindness had a real impact, that it could change lives," he replied, the sincerity in his voice making me admire this man even more. Over time, we managed to gather a group of investors who became interested in our project. The restaurant that Mr. Thompson dreamed of reopening was finally taking shape. It was a place that would not only serve delicious food, but also become a space of welcome and hope for those, like us, who had faced hardships. As the opening date approached, my mother and I were excited. Martha, who had always been strong and determined, seemed more cheerful than I had seen her in a long time. "I'm so proud of you, Lucas. Your kindness not only helped Thompson, but also brought back your father's memory in a beautiful way," she said, as we prepared our clothes for the occasion. Finally, the big day arrived. The restaurant, now called Sabor de Esperanza, was full of lights and excited voices. Friends, family, and even strangers gathered to celebrate. I felt part of something great, something that went beyond me. During the event, Mr. Thompson gave a speech that left me emotional. He spoke about the importance of community, kindness, and how a simple act can reverberate in unexpected ways. Today, we celebrate not only the reopening of this restaurant, but also the memory of a great man. Lucas's father was an example of generosity and love, and his kindness lives on through this boy. Tears were streaming down my face. I looked at my mother, who was just as excited as I was. It was a moment of togetherness, a renewed bond between our families. Thompson continued, "I thank Lucas, who with his last slice of pizza not only saved my life, but also brought back the fading light in me." At that moment, I realized that my simple gesture had created a chain of love and solidarity. I understood that kindness, when planted, grows and flourishes in ways we could never imagine. And there, in that restaurant, surrounded by friends and family, I finally felt connected to my father's legacy, knowing that he would be proud of me. At the end of the night, as the lights went out and people began to say goodbye, Thompson approached me. "Lucas, you are the true essence of what it means to be human. Your kindness not only helped me, but also brought back the memory of your father. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your life." I smiled, feeling warm in my heart. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You taught me that even the smallest gestures can have a monumental impact. I look forward to what the future holds." And in that moment, I knew that together, we were just beginning a new journey, one filled with hope and new possibilities.